Hi, this is Melanie of Pardesi Reviews, and I'm here with Alisa, otherwise known as Bollywood Newbie on Twitter. And she asked me if I would recommend a South Indian film. I may have given her the wrong one. You'll find out in a minute. It's one Nenokkadine starring Mahesh Babu. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the cataclysmic deaths in the Hindi industry this week, Rishi Kapoor and Irrfan Khan. Thanks, Alisa, for joining me today. This is super fun seeing another face that doesn't live in my house since we're
Same.
Since we're
Same.
all on shutdown. Here in Illinois, we have another month that we're supposed to shelter in place in our house. And basically, I'm not even going out to shopping. I'm sending my husband to do grocery shopping. So, yeah, it's really, really nice to see another face. So, and I was really glad you suggested watching a South Indian film together, because I know you started with Amir Khan movies, and that's how you got into Bollywood. I can't remember. What was the first one that you watched that kind of got you into all of this?
It was Raja Hindustani, which is
Wow.
completely different. That was my first Hindi film.
With the song Pardesi.
The song Pardesi, and it was, for whatever reason, it grabbed me, and I was thoroughly entertained, and I really loved Amir, and I thought, well, what else has this guy done? And of course, having no concept that he was internationally superstar famous. And then the second film I saw was Dangal.
Wow.
And I went, wow, yeah, exactly. Because I was like, wow, this guy's range is amazing. It's just such a different role. And so I devoured all of his films, and then I expanded from there. And that was 2.5 years ago.
So was it Netflix that recommended the film to you, or you just kind of how did it?
No, it was random. I saw a person online commenting on a blog whose username was Raja Hindustani, and I don't know why I did this, but I Googled it and I found the movie, and I watched the preview, and the preview was this Pardesi song, and which is a gorgeous song. And I thought, wow, this looks amazing. Let me check out the movie, and I did, and there I was, and I've been all in ever since.
Yeah. I mean, he was actually. I talk about watching DDLJ, but actually, my very first Hindi film was Lagan, which is way back in the days when Netflix only mailed you DVDs, and it's because it was nominated for the Foreign Language Oscar back in 2001, I think, and I was just kind of, interested in it, so, and I loved it, but how it was to search for things online, and I watched Dil Chutta Hai next, so I actually watched two of his films first. But it wasn't until Netflix and the ease of streaming now, and how much easier it is to just, like you say, I want to watch everything that this guy has ever done. And it's just so much easier to have access with all the films that are on Netflix and Amazon Prime and Ian Tuzan and all these different things. So,
and I admire the old people like you and Kathy Gibson and Margaret Redlick, who were doing this when you had to go to the Indian store in the neighborhood, and get DVD recommendations from people. Yeah, I don't have to do that, so I'm very grateful for that.
So, yeah. But you started with a lot of Hindi films, and not everybody may know, but you were so captivated that you made a trip to India this year. I mean, that was what I was hoping to do later this year, but with everything that's happening, I don't know when I'm going to be able to go. But I'm very jealous of you, because you see all these amazing places, and you want to go there,
And India was unreal. Well, first of all, I got there in the nick of time, because when I came back 5 days later, they revoked all tourist visas. So it was a totally under the wire moment that I got there. And India is amazing. Everybody, the people were just so generous and nice. and helpful. That's really what made the trip for me, because I saw some amazing things. Like I went to Mahabapuram, I think that's how you pronounce it, which is a UNESCO World Heritage
Mm.
Site. And I went to a tiger reserve in
Wow.
Carolina. I got to see wild elephants. I mean, it was like the natural beauty was amazing. But with the memory I really take with me is of just how many wonderful people I met there who are still in touch with me. I'm getting WhatsApp messages all the time from people I met there. It's very heartwarming. Um, and yeah, like I just have this memory of being in Mumbai and sitting on Chowpatty Beach and eating food. And I was doing this as part of a tour, but the tour guide, when they realize, oh, I love movies and I know all about Hindi films and I know who all the actors are, we were off, yes, and this and that, and gossiping about all the stars. And, it really made the trip special. And the tour guide said, it felt like I was just chatting with a friend and I wasn't working, which was really nice.
I mean, they're
Um,
probably so amazed to have somebody on a tour with them that actually is familiar with some of these names and films and everything, because they might point out, well,
yeah,
such and such was filmed there, and for most American tourists, that wouldn't mean anything.
totally. And I got to see Shah Rukh Khan's home,
Oh,
who's which I forgot the name of it now because I'm not
Manat.
as Manat,
Manat.
yes.
Yeah.
Manat. And I also went to the Starbucks. I don't know if you know about this, Melanie, but there's a Starbucks in Red Chili's building, and they call it Starbucks. And so I met Suchin Mehrotra, who writes for Film
Yeah.
Companion. He and I met there for coffee.
Oh my
So,
God.
sometimes I think though that like you should have gone instead of me, because as big of a fan as I am about the films, you are on another level, and like you've actually been written about in a newspaper, the Deccan
Decca Chronicle, yeah.
Chronicle. Yeah. So like you would be treated, because I was treated so well, and I'm thinking, man, Melanie would be a rock star in India because people would just be so happy to meet her in person and host you. And
Yeah.
this is kind
It's
of place that it is. I had a tour guide who tried to pay for our meal, and I'm like, wait a minute, are you being reimbursed by your boss? And she said, no. I said, no, no, you don't pay for the meal. I'll pay for the meal. Don't do that. But that's just like, very generous people, which was wonderful.
oh, I
Yeah.
cannot wait until I don't know what the new normal is going to be, but I hope that I'll be able to get there next year. This year, yeah, I don't even know. I mean, my son's wedding was supposed. We were talking about this. My son's wedding was supposed to be last weekend. We're not even sure when it's safe to reschedule. So, yeah, but I can't. Yeah, I can't. There's the problem is narrowing down because there's so many places I want to go. Right. So, I this week was just one blow after another, because we all knew Irrfan Khan had been diagnosed with some sort of rare cancer. He had been treatment in the UK, and then had come back and made Angrezi Medium, which I haven't seen yet, which was one of the last films I think that was in theaters before all the theaters had to shut down. And then suddenly we heard the news of his death, and it just seemed to hit everyone like a body blow. He was only, I've seen 53 and 54. I don't know exactly what his age was, but I know it hit me really hard because he was such a singular talent. And I haven't seen all of his films, but I've seen some of the most iconic ones. And he had this ability. He crossed over. He did mainstream Hindi films. He did parallel Hindi films, art films. He did art films in Hollywood, and he did Jurassic World. I mean, he did
Right.
everything.
Right.
And he was so unusual, so singular. You mentioned you'd only seen a couple of his films, and I can't remember. One was Piku.
One was Piku, the other's the Lunchbox. So if you have
Yes.
to have seen two of his films, those are pretty good
Yeah.
choices. And I want to see more. It just I loved him in both those movies. And one thing I really he made it look very he had this fluidity. He wasn't a dancer. He didn't dance
No.
in any of his films, but the way he moved and carried his body, I wouldn't even
Yeah.
know. I don't know if graceful is even the right word, but he just had this kind of languid energy, but at the same
Yeah.
time, when he needed to turn it up, he could do that as well.
Yeah.
And he had those wonderful, soulful eyes. And he wasn't conventionally handsome. And yet in Piku, where he's with Deepika, who's a world beauty, younger than him, and yet completely plausible that she falls for him. You completely
Yeah.
understand the attraction that they had for each other. And obviously he more than held his own with Amitabh, who's one of the giants of film. So yeah, he was amazing. And like you said, that ability to cross genres, to cross industries and be good in everything,
Yeah.
and to bring whatever was needed to, because I just started watching clips after he died online, and I haven't, not watching the whole movie, but even like with Tom Hanks, knowing how to play off Tom Hanks, and also as a person, stories coming out that I didn't know about him, that he gave up Interstellar in order to do the lunchbox, and Matt Damon took the part he was supposed to have in Interstellar, and which is amazing, right? And like the fact that he turned down Christopher Nolan in a movie that was going to be a blockbuster, giant worldwide hit, and he opted out
Yeah.
because that wasn't the right choice for him, and then takes a lot of integrity and strength of character to do that, and
Yeah.
that was how he conducted his career.
Yeah. What I listened to today, so in the US we have this famous radio talk show called Fresh Air. And the host, Terry Gross, draws out stories from people that are amazing. And when someone dies, they frequently replay that interview. And today I listened to a replay of her interview from 2012 with Irrfan Khan. And I just started tearing up just listening to his voice again. And there was some amazing stories. Like, he said he was such a naive kid. They didn't have TV in their home. He wasn't allowed to see movies as a kid. And I think he said TV came late, and that he saw a TV tower, and he and a friend thought, if we climb up this mountain to the tower, then we can talk to somebody about how to get on TV. He actually did this when he was 14 years old. He's like, how naive. Like, we just thought that's where the office will be. We'll go up to this tower. So he got into this acting school, and only then did he see there was a place, a theater that showed art films. That was when, as an adult, that young adult, that he was able to see Scorsese, Brando, all of these kind of singular acting Hollywood talents, and Fellini, foreign films from Europe, and you could see like that. He said there is no. There's not really a tradition of, as he put it, realistic style acting and Margaret Redlick, that we've talked about, she's talked about the history that it comes from Parsi theater, and that's what he talked about in this interview as well. But I was just like, he was so erudite, he was such a smart man and well spoken in interviews, and it wasn't that long. I encourage you to seek that out, and I will put a link to that in the description. But it's just such a loss. So some of my favorites, he did television, I guess, in the beginning of his career in India. But he did this HBO show with Gabriel Byrne called In Treatment, and each night there would be a different patient, and he was the patient Sunil, and to see him playing this depressed patient. They played a segment of one of those on this interview, and it just kind of brought it all back to me. That was one of my favorite performances for me. It was such a treat. Like, every week there was another half hour of him just in conversation with Gabriel Byrne and these. So that's one that's an amazing. But yeah, you've seen some of his best. She also played a from Slumdog Millionaire, which I haven't seen in such a long time, but he just talked about how that had opened up doors. Another film that really opened him up to the worldwide audience is a film called The Warrior, which was Asif Kapadia, who later won an Oscar for the documentary of Amy. So, again, like a European director, but kind of brought something out in him, and it was a kind of film that played film festivals and got him a lot of notice. But yeah, he could do everything from crazy comedy to the most serious of films. But he said in this interview one of the most meaningful films for him was The Namesake, which was a famous novel, and he said that part really. He said he had to find a way to be unobtrusive in a room. It was really, I was like, wow, but he's right, because your eye goes to him whenever he's on screen. Like you say, he's not maybe conventionally handsome, but he draws your eye, he draws your attention, and he was kind of having to have a different energy in this film. And it's about an Indian immigrant in America who's trying to connect with his son. And so I would highly recommend that one as well. So Rishi Kapoor.
I was thinking about. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying.
Go.
I was thinking about doing a double bill of that with a Hindi medium, because even though they're different genres, they're both about fathers and children and what fathers are sacrificing for their children. So I'll keep you posted when I see that.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw, but Fahad Fazil, you've seen him in some Malayalam films, and he posted this letter that he wrote that basically his whole career is due to Irrfan Khan. I can't remember which film it was that he saw him, if it was a Lunchbox or one of, and he would just he quit his college and was like, okay, I think I'm going to try acting, seeing what Irrfan Khan was doing on screen. And they never met, but he said, and then he was regretting that. Like, why didn't I go and just go and shake his hand?
Yeah, I saw that.
So Rishi Kapoor is also just seemed like an earthquake. People were not even beginning to recover. It wasn't even 24 hours. And Amitabh's tweet was this primal scream, no, it can't be, And I was not even aware. I don't follow Rishi Kapoor. I hadn't followed him. That I did not realize he'd been recovering from cancer and going through this battle. Obviously, he's in this storied Kapoor family, with their own film studio. His grandfather was a famous actor. His father was Raj Kapoor. His son is Ranbir. The whole family. I posted a tweet that in the AP obituary just was something and his nieces and nephews and parents also acted in. I was the most you can't it was the most awkward sentence, that they had no understanding of how huge this family is in Indian cinema. I will be honest, I was not the hugest fan of Rishi Kapoor. He was kind of a prickly personality on Twitter. I did admire him as a character actor, but I wasn't alive and watching his films in the 80s to kind of get why he was such a big deal as a romantic lead. When I'm seeing him as a young man, I was seeing the rotund gentleman he was as an older man. Just kind of I don't get it. So, I've seen Chandani. I've seen not that many of his early films, but I really admired him as a character actor. And Kapoor and Sons, he was excellent, and he was a great villain. In D-Day and Agnipath, he was an amazing villain, which not everybody who has been a hero is willing to take roles like that. So I don't know what films you've seen by him.
I've seen so many that it's hard for me to even list them all out, because he was ubiquitous. He was in everything. It feels you know what I mean?
Everybody's father, or even student of the year. He plays the gay principal, which when you think about it now, you're that was kind of radical that he did that. All sorts of things.
Right. I started out disliking him because the first few, and I don't even remember what they were, but I saw a few films where it was his worst tendencies, because when he was bad, he was chewing scenery. and upstaging everybody, and that put me off. And then, like you said, on Twitter, he kind of had a reputation for being not nice all the time on Twitter, though sometimes he was very nice on Twitter, to be fair.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I don't like this guy. But then I started to see more roles, like he was Kajol's father in Fana.
Yeah.
And kind of those supporting roles which can go really wrong, but he played them really well. And like you said, Kapoor and Sons, he was amazing as the grandfather of this horribly dysfunctional family. And it's an arty film. It's more like almost a parallel film than it is a mainstream film, and he still was able to do well in that. So then I started to like go, okay. And then what really sold me on him was Bobby. I saw Bobby.
See, I still have not seen it, so.
Oh, you have to see Bobby Dimple's debut. It's an amazing film. Oh, and yeah, and you know, it's wonderful. It's young love. They're both gorgeous. The songs are great. It's lavish. Like you can tell that for the time it was a big budget film. So then I thought, okay. And I started to realize every time I see Rishi with Dimple, it's great, because then they did a movie like 20 years later called PR Mind Twist, where they're playing an older couple falling in love and their families don't approve. And Dimple and Rishi still have phenomenal chemistry, and that was, very endearing. So anyway, like he was definitely a problematic person in his personal life, and he was definitely as an actor, he had his high highs and his low lows.
Yeah.
But, it's undeniable that he was such an important part of film history in India. His influence on so many different actors, like Juhi Chawla wrote an amazing tribute to him. I don't know if you saw it. It was quite long. And then Tapsi also talked about what it was like to work with him. And I thought it was interesting that women were praising him for what it was like to work with him, because his reputation was kind of funky about being sexist, and yet his co-stars really respected him and liked him. So yeah, he was a contradictory person. It's weird though, because like, I don't know if in another time I would have been hit as hard by these deaths as I was. I think I would have mourned Irrfan regardless, just because he's a once in a generation talent kind of thing, and that's a loss. He had another 20, 30 years of acting ahead of him, and we got robbed of that. So that would have been a loss regardless. But to have it happen now, when we have already so many losses in the world, and it just feels unfair, even more unfair. Like we're already grieving over this disease that has shut the world down, and then we lose these two people who have brought a lot of joy and entertainment and thought-provoking art.
Right. And it's also, it's also just because we're kind of all stuck inside our regular busy calendar of all the things that we used to do is gone. And so in some ways you have more time to really let some of these things sink in and think about it. And so it hits you harder. But also more opportunity to like be able to watch some of their films and look back. I've seen so many people saying on Twitter or Facebook, oh, I went through a marathon of, watching all these films. I just wanted to revisit them. So, yeah, I definitely need to catch up on Bobby and some of the early Rishi Kapoor films. But what an amazing long career. I know it's just like, it's such a blow to his family. Even he admitted he wasn't the best father, but I thought it was so sad his daughter was not able to travel back for his funeral. And I think Alia was FaceTiming it for, like, it's, all of these things are so hard in this climate that we're in right now, that people are not able to mourn and grieve together. Everything is just out of whack and out of kilter. So let's move on to happier things. And Mahesh Babu. so Mahesh Babu, I started with the Bahubali films in Telugu and watching all the Prabhas films that I could get my hands on. And then I kind of gradually expanded out, and it's Mahesh, I don't even remember why I started, watch the first one. But this film, One Alone, I'm sure I'm murdering it. Nenokkadine, I'm murdering the title, but it means One Alone. And he plays this rock star named Gautham. And the opening scenes, or there's some flashback scenes, and his little son, which the first time I watched it, I didn't realize, but his son plays Mahesh's character as a young child, in a lot of flashback scenes, and I thought his son did a great job as well. But which is it's nice because he really does look like his dad, so that the flashbacks work. But I remember, like, okay, I whatever I'd heard about Mahesh, but when you see that the opening number is this big rock concert number, which number one is very unusual for kind of, it's not common for an Indian film necessarily. It was a really kind of a rock kind of a song, and I'm like, whoa, this guy is a star. Like, you see right from the beginning, he has this stage presence to him, this screen presence to him. So there was a lot of flaws to this film. As I was rewatching it again, I hadn't watched it in years. I was like, oh gosh, I wanted to revisit it, but then I was regretting because some of the flaws still make me so angry as I'm watching certain scenes, and I was like, okay, it's still bad. These scenes are still bad, and I'm like, why did I tell Alisa that this is the first one she should start with Mahesh? Because there's so many other great films of his. But anyway, so what was your kind of first impression as you started watching this film?
Yeah. So, and I just to give a little bit of context for the audience, I've been primarily watching Hindi films, and now I've asked Melanie to sort of be my senpai and teach me about South Indian films, because I started watching Malayalam films and enjoying them. So now this is like, I don't know if I've seen, well, yeah, I have seen another Telugu film, obviously, the Bahubali I've seen. But anyway, going back to Mahesh Babu, I I had so many mixed emotions about the movie. So him, first of all, he's gorgeous, he can dance, and he can do action. So Mahesh is awesome. And he has a huge amount of charisma, and, he's great in this. You can't keep your eyes off him when he's on the screen. And, some of the action scenes were just unbelievable. Yeah. Like, well, the very first scene, and the movie starts with a bang. Like, there's no preamble. You go right into first a concert, which then turns into a giant shootout, and then he
motorcycle chase.
Yeah. Go right, and then it turns out it didn't actually happen.
Right? Yeah. Psych.
Psych. Oh wait, what do you mean it didn't actually happen? And that actually, unfortunately, kind of leads me. Well, I mean, so I wanted to talk about the actors first. So that was Mahesh was great throughout.
Yeah,
he's amazing. I do want to see other films of his. And then Kriti was in it. And was that her first?
I believe role? This was her first role. So I actually, because of this film, had so little respect for her for a long time, until I saw her in Barely Ki Barfi, which is a Hindi film opposite Ayushmann Khurrana and Rajkumar Rao. And then I was like, oh, she actually does have talent, and she's pretty good. But yeah. I was so... Okay, so we'll just get into it. This film has absolutely fantastic action sequences. If you take just little pieces of the film as standalones... Right. They're amazing. My husband would not sit down and watch the whole thing with me, but even he was just kind of like, he calls Mahesh Big Ears, by the way. He was like, oh, it's Big Ears.
Okay.
But he
the male view and the female view, but anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think the action sequences are world class, but he was just like, wait, what? It didn't happen? Right from the beginning. There's all these twists and double twists, and you have a character who has mental health issues. And so I don't know what you want to call it. He has trauma from a childhood incident. We keep getting flashbacks to this trauma that happened to him when he believes he saw his parents murdered, and everyone keeps telling him, no, you didn't see that. You never had parents. I'm like, well, every kid has to have had parents, but okay. And everybody keeps... he never knows what the truth is, and we as a viewer never do either. And that's kind of it's not quite like Inception or Memento, but it's trying to be something like that where we don't have a reliable narrator. We never know when what we're seeing, is this true? Is this a hallucination that he's having? Or what exactly is happening? There's one particular scene at the interval when they use that to great effect, and that's one of the best scenes for me in the film, is that he believes he's hallucinating and he actually kills someone in real life, not realizing that it's all real. And I thought he acted so well in that particular scene. But there's so many twists that you're like, wait, what? Wait, what? Like, reset button again? What? Wait? So it's too many.
I gave up pretty early on just trying to understand the plot, which is a bad sign. And I agree with you. It was trying to be Inception or Memento and kind of do that. But only Christopher Nolan can do Christopher Nolan well. I've never seen anybody else. And even Christopher Nolan is not my favorite director. So, but that genre is his. I've never seen anyone else pull it off. And especially, I think for Indian films is not really a good fit for that, probably. You know what I mean?
We do have the remake of Memento. It was remade in multiple languages. Genie, which I'm sure you've seen. Amir did that, but that was short-term memory loss, not mental health or schizophrenia or something where people are having hallucinations. So that one was easier for the audience to grasp. Like, we always know what's real, but the character doesn't, but we always know what's real.
And the thing about the film is, like, I felt like first of all, he had movie disease. He didn't have anything diagnosable in real life. Like, I felt like there was not a lot of consistency in what he was going through. Because first, start to nitpick the movie, it means the movie didn't work. And my very first thing was, how did this dude become a rock star? He's mentally ill and an orphan, and he's famous, and yet he walks around India with nobody bothering him. But then he goes to London, and suddenly people are like, he's extremely famous. And you know what I mean? Like, he's in Goa and nobody's reacting to the famous rock star, but in London people are. Anyway, so that's the kind of thing that, that Alfred Hitchcock used to call it the plausibles. And he would say, like, if you're paying attention to the plausibles, it means the film director's not doing their job. And he's right. Because, like, I saw War, which is completely ridiculous, and yet I wasn't thinking too much about how ridiculous it was because I was entertained. And this had entertaining moments too, but then the stuff with the, it's real, it's not real. It just got to be way, way too confusing. Yeah, and I just gave up on it. Yeah. And the thing about Kriti is, like, you're saying you didn't like her after the film, and I mean, I have the advantage of having seen her in other stuff. And it's really not her fault. Her character
it's not her fault.
Written so poorly. The writing, she was really done in by the writing, because I couldn't get a handle on this character. I couldn't figure out, is she a ditz? Is she a genius? Is she the feisty reporter? Is she the damsel in distress? Like, it changed from scene to scene. Though the scene where he rescues her on the jet ski is unreal. That was a great action scene. And they're fighting on the jet skis, and there are guys with, like, water, I don't know what they are, like, flying over the water. That was crazy. That was actually really, so those scenes were really, first of all, you could tell they spent a ton of money on it. They had CGI. They were well choreographed. The other scene that I thought was amazing was in the garage in London when all the motorcycles come out and drive over the cars. Yeah. That was incredible. And the very opening scene, like when he slides on the motorcycle and it causes the car to flip, and then he goes under the car in slow motion. I mean, there's some really good stuff that way. I just wish it had been in the service of a better movie. And it's 3 hours long.
Yes. Yeah, it's 3 hours long. And frankly, like, if they would have jettisoned... Not normally, I want the romantic plot, but if they kind of had just had her as an established girlfriend and not had the whole thing where she tried to make him her boyfriend, it would have been better for the narrative line of the film. There's other films, believe me, where he has great romantic storylines, but he always does kind of mix it in with this action. But this is one of the, like you say, some of these action scenes are world class as standalone things. But the problem is you're constantly twisting the viewer and being like, no, it wasn't all real, or oh, this was another vision, or like you say, we can't get a handle kind of on what's wrong with Mahesh. And I don't know what they obviously do not have HIPAA rules, which is this law in the U.S. where you have complete confidentiality. You cannot even tell like somebody's spouse things unless they give permission. And here the doctor is just like randomly telling some reporter and some cop like, well, I'm diagnosing this, and like, I'm like, seriously, you're telling this reporter all these things about him? I mean, I know for the movie that they're trying to explain, but yeah.
And the thing is, like, if he's that sick, then how is he functioning as a rock star? You know what I mean? Like, he's got this career that requires a high level of functioning, and he's living in this palatial place, you know, a really nice house and all that, so he has a lot of money, but he's psychotic and having constant visions of murders. I mean, it just didn't make any sense. I mean, if you're going to talk about the guy Genie and all the remakes of Memento, in all of them, the guy's a mess. You know, I mean, like,
and living in a crazy apartment and whatever, right?
Right. There's no inconsistency there. So, yeah, the writing was, I mean, I apologies, but the writing was just bad. It was just bad writing. And it's really too bad because I also wonder if there was more than one writer on it, because
there was 4 writers. That's what I just looked at.
I can totally tell, because like when you look at the family scenes, they're actually quite poignant.
Yes.
And in a different movie, and at the end, when you really start to find out what happened with the family, and I thought this is obviously all spoilers, so you know, but it involves rice, which I thought was, I just like, really, okay, you know, but the family scenes when he finally remembers, those were poignant, but they didn't land the way they should have. Like at that point in the film, it should have really gotten you after everything he's been through. And didn't as much as it should have, because
it's still, I remember the first time I watched it, those are the scenes, like you say, when he can't remember even what his parents look like. This traumatic events has from his childhood has stolen even his memory. He just has vague memories of them touching his hair or patting his shoulder or whatever, but he can't remember what they look like, and it's tormenting him. And at the end, he finally remembers how, as a child, like the rhyme that his mother taught him how to get back to the house, and he finds a secret cubbyhole with the photo album. And you're right, it just, he is excellent in that scene, the tears, like I remember really being choked up, but it's the kind of scene I should be sobbing or whatever, and it doesn't land as much because we've just come from so much insanity, both ways. I mean, insanity in writing and just how things don't, like you say, make sense within the film. And the reason I say that I hate Kriti is because her part as this feisty reporter, she's at that concert, she films what he thinks is someone chasing him or trying to shoot him, and so he's chasing that person. He thinks he kills someone, turns himself in, and her footage proves that he was just punching air. There was no one there. And then she tries to get another interview with him on his yacht, and she keeps playing mind games with him. She keeps gaslighting him. She keeps, changing clothes and things like that. And then she sings the song, I Want to Be Your One Day Girlfriend or something like that. But to me, it was so frustrating. How does their love story make any sense when she's gaslighting him? Like, I could never get past that. Like,
No, you were right. She was horrible. I thought it was going to turn out that she was working for the bad guys, and then she wasn't. But then it doesn't make any sense. Like, why would she do that to him? And she's laughing about it. That was the other thing, like, because it was sort of like they were trying to play that she was doing it for his own good, like she was trying to shock him out of his psychosis somehow by doing this. Whatever, that doesn't really make any sense, but okay. But then, she was so flip about it.
Yes.
And the other thing about they made her the hot chick in this movie, and it's not that Kriti isn't gorgeous, because obviously she is, right? But that's not her sweet spot as a actor, right? Like in Borelli Ki Barfi, she's this kind of goofy, iconoclastic person who doesn't fit in, and she plays that part amazingly well. And that is really where she's going to shine. She doesn't shine being the decorative girlfriend,
Yeah, you're right. It was like a square peg and a round hole kind of a thing. Like, it didn't completely fit. But like I said, I just couldn't really buy. Like, listen, I love a enemies to lovers trope as much as the next person, but there wasn't like a connecting of dots that made you think this is why she fell in love. Besides the fact that he's hot, this is why he fell in love with her. Besides the fact that she's hot, there was something missing there. It's how we got from her being so mean to him, obviously him rescuing her, but then there was I was like, is there a scene that was on the cutting room floor? I mean, the movie's 3 hours long.
When they say that I love you, which I can't remember how far you're into the movie, but then they are like, I love you. And I'm like, really? Why?
Where did this come from?
Exactly. Like, how did this happen? And I thought it was going to turn, which would have been, it's not very Indian, but like it turned into one of those, I love you, but I'm going to kill you because you're a bad traitorous person. You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about, like a kind of a noirish kind of a thing. But no, that didn't happen. It was like, no, we're going to be together forever at the end. You know, it does not fit into that.
I mean, she was supposed to be, I mean, they were trying to write her as the comic relief, kind of to make these funny scenes, and it was like, this isn't funny to me. Like, this is not funny to me that she's being so cruel to him and making fun of his mental illness, whatever it is, she's making fun of it, and I don't like it. So, I don't even think it's my Western sensibilities. I don't know. It just...
I don't think so either. I think it was just poorly written. Her character made no sense. She wasn't a character. She was a prop, kind of. Like, whatever they needed her to be in the scene is what they made her do. There was no consistent core to the character. It's bad. That was bad.
Yeah. We need to show Mahesh rescuing her. She needs to be rescued. We need her to be supportive. Oh, Mahesh, I'll come with you to London. Or whatever.
Right. Exactly. And now that I think about it, what makes it even more so is they're carrying the movie, because there are side characters, but the side characters are poorly developed. Like, there's not really, with a couple of exceptions. I mean, the guy who was the cabbie in London, I don't know his name, but he's good.
He's a famous character actor that's in many Telugu films. The guy that's the ultimate baddie, that actor's name is Nassar. He's one of those sort of like Prakash Raj that you see him in all different kind of films, that he's in all different industries, and he's very talented. He works with what he's given. Let's just put it that way. That room when they finally have the final mano a mano battle was like, the production design with that was like, somebody had a fun time with this.
I mean, it looked gorgeous, but it made no sense. You know what I mean? Like, what was that room? It's just
every science lab has one of those. Didn't you know that, Alisa?
Again, yeah, and again, I was like, that dude sells rice, and this is like how he's living, you know. I don't know. It seemed it wasn't, yeah. The MacGuffin wasn't a good MacGuffin. Let's put it that way. It's just like
Yeah,
not
yeah.
well
I
done.
mean,
Um,
at the end, I do think, especially certain scenes, are some very good acting by Mahesh, especially that interval scene where one of the people that has been in his visions that he thinks killed his father, he encounters him in a hotel. I think it was a hotel restroom, and he happens to have a gun on. I can't remember if he takes the other guy's gun. I think he takes the other guy's gun, but he just has this whole monologue. Who the guy is just shivering at having this gun pointed at his head, and Mahesh just keeps saying, "Well, I know you're not real, but you know," and then I know you're not real, so I'm just going to press this trigger, and then he walks out, and Kriti's like, "What was that sound?" And he's like, "You heard that?"
yeah.
And I just thought, and then he's trying to wake the guy up. Like, that was a really great use of the what's real, what's not real. And it was a good interval point. I mean, sure, that was a good, you know, hanging suspension moment to go out to get your popcorn and come back.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. But, you know, it's a shame because, like I said, it's obvious they invested a lot of money in the film. It looked phenomenal.
Yeah.
The locations were great. The action was great, but it needed to be an hour shorter.
Yeah.
maybe 45 minutes shorter, something. It just needed to
Yeah.
be shorter. It needed, yeah, just better writing, man. You know, it's always a bad sign when you have 4 writers too. It's always just like people know it's not working
Yeah. So
and they
that,
got to
yeah.
bring in more people to fix it, and that's not good.
So
It's not
this
good.
particular director, I have seen some of his other work that I would recommend. So the director is Sukumar. His most recent film is called Rangastalam, and it actually has a hero who's deaf, which is really unusual. And so that one it's a village setting. That one is very, very good. And then he had a film called Arya, which is also one that I would recommend. But yeah, this one was, I think, not a successful movie for Mahesh in theaters. I could imagine if you're watching 20 minutes of it on TV, like, I think it's gained popularity. It's something you don't mind just sitting down and watching at home. But if you think I paid hard-earned money to go see what I'm expecting to be this big film, and it's a disappointment, yeah. And Mahesh is one of those actors where there are sky-high expectations for his films because he's one of the big stars, he can get the big directors, and like you say, all the money on a film like this. So some of his recent films, you know, have gone both ways. There was a film called Spider, with a Y, Spider, and it was kind of a spy thriller kind of a thing. It had a great villain, but people were really disappointed on that one. I thought that was okay, but that was one where people were like up in arms that it didn't meet their expectations.
Right.
His film Bharat Ani Nenu, where he plays someone who suddenly becomes the prime minister. It's the CM, but the equivalent of the governor of a state, and it's sort of like, what is that movie with the president that's dating? There's a Hollywood movie. You know the one I'm talking about?
Yeah,
The American President or something like that.
American President. I think that's what it's called. Yeah.
So the romantic storyline is very much like that movie, where he's trying to date and it cannot be normal, right? Because he's got the whole security detail and the whole thing, and how can he? So it's that the romantic storyline in that one is very cute, and then kind of when the relationship gets trashed by the paparazzi, one of his all-time career best, he does this press conference where he makes this impassioned speech, and I actually went to when you watch a movie and then you kind of sneak in, I was like, okay, I know that's, I'm like, I bet I could get in and see that speech again. Like, it was that good that I wanted to sneak in just to watch that one scene again, like a couple of days later. So that's one that I would highly recommend as well. He just, he's had a long career. I had recommended also some of his earlier films, so maybe if you'll indulge me, we'll do one of the older ones. But he can be extremely cute. Go ahead. He's extremely cute and charming in some of these, romantic storylines, but he's great at action. He just has that, I don't know, he just has that screen presence to do action super well.
Yeah, and the way he moves and carries himself, but yeah, he's very good at it. But I was gonna ask, since I am so new to Telugu films, I have no sense of where he is in like the hierarchy of the films, or, is he like one of the tops? Is he?
Yeah, he's one of the top stars.
Big, right?
Say that again. Yeah, Prabhas is really, yeah.
Okay, so they'd be like Ranveer level in Hindi cinema, you'd think?
Yeah,
around there?
Yeah.
Big? Okay. I'm just trying to I'm completely, it's so funny because the first 2 years of watching these movies, I was like, I can only deal with Hindi because I can't take on another industry right now. I'm too overwhelmed just getting my arms around that. But now I feel ready to kind of like tackle the other southern. And how would you describe Telugu compared to Tamil, compared to Malayalam films, like in terms of a sensibility?
I think you've already gotten that Malayalam film is such a small industry that it feels like what independent cinema is here in the U.S. Like, the films are very much something that you could imagine watching at Sundance or something like that. That it just has that kind of indie vibe because it's all about the script. It's all about really good storytelling on a small budget. And just really interesting characters, and especially female-focused films like Helen, for instance. So that, to me, is what is so unique about it. Great acting, but especially to me, it's just what they do with small budgets and what an impact that they make with so little money, to me, is amazing, because there's a much more realistic style of acting. Telugu, opposite end, where everything is big. Everything is the kind of fist fights where somebody flies across and fluttering of leaves, and it's like, what do I feel like on a Saturday night? Yeah, I want to see a machete fight. I'm gonna see a Telugu film. You know what I mean? So totally. It's heightened melodrama, frequently revenge stories. So there's just, I don't know, everything is kind of up to 11. And they also have this thing where, I cannot pronounce the actor's name, Brahmat, it's like his name is so long, but they have what's called comedy uncles. So this film didn't really have it. So it's just sort of comic relief, and they find it hilarious. Like, there's after the Bahubali films, there's a film called Mirchi, which means like hot, spicy, like, or anger, Mirchi, Prabhas film. And actually the guy that plays Katapa in the Bahubali films plays his father. And it's about, it's a kind of a village setting thing with rivalries between two villages to the point that people are literally after each other with machetes and whatever. And, so Prabhas, he is so great. I've lost my train of thought of what I was trying to explain for that one. But he's so great. Oh, there's a scene with this particular comedy uncle. So amidst all this melodrama and, romantic scenes and action and all of this guy shows up and he's, somebody's brother-in-law or whatever. And you can see Prabhas in the scenes cannot keep from laughing. Like, you know what I mean? It's like watching Saturday Night Live where you can see they're cracking up. And I'm like, this guy's not funny. What is so funny? Like, but you can see it's like the history of watching this guy or whatever, that whatever he's doing is hilarious to Prabhas, and Prabhas is in the same room with him, and he cannot keep a straight face to do the scene. And I'm like, I don't get it.
Well, that's like Johnny Lever in Hindi, so I get it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Similar kind of a thing. But yeah, kind of bigger than life. And Tamil film can be, you said you haven't watched any Mani Ratnam films. He is one of the top directors in Indian cinema. Long career, amazing films, some of them very hard-hitting. So I don't know if I could say somewhere in between, but they have each of them to me have kind of their own flavor. Do you know what I mean? They're all have their own special, they're different kind of flavors. And for me, people are like, well, which one do you like best? And I'm like, I like all of them. Like, what do I feel like tonight? Is more where I'm at. And I do like, especially some of the music in Telugu and Tamil films, like A.R. Rahman is, again, like the pinnacle of music. And so most of it, his native language is Tamil, and he reserves some of his best music for Tamil films. So, and that just makes this certain magic when he is doing a soundtrack for a Mani Ratnam film. Like, it's just iconic music. So there's certain stars that I follow in each of these genres, and in Telugu cinema, and Tamil cinema, it's like you're saying, in the same way in Hindi cinema, are you a Amir fan, or are you a Shah Rukh fan, or are you a Saman fan? It's like like it seems like another level of, are you an Ajit fan, are you a Vijay fan, are you a, whatever, you're kind of saying what tribe you are. You know what I mean, with some of these. And so, I think Mahesh has diehard fans, Prabhas has diehard fans. All of these, have their, same way like the Salman Bais come out for the Salman Khan movies or whatever. Yeah. But I like them all for different reasons, and I follow all different actors. And Telugu cinema sometimes is way over the top. And I suppose if you grew up watching and have been watching it for 3 decades, some of the storylines to me, I'm like, oh, I really like that. And people are like, oh, it's the same old thing. And I'm like, well, it's not the same old thing to me, so it's okay, But I can understand if you've been seeing year after year after year of village revenge kind of plots, you're like, I want to see something different. So, and that was, I think, what this film was trying to give. Something that had a little bit, like you say, of a Christopher Nolan kind of a vibe, something different, not the same old story. And I do think Mahesh Babu tries to have sort of a social, or the directors that he's picking are trying to have some sort of social message. I mean, this was like this magical rice that was going to feed the hungry, basically. And at the end, instead of allowing a evil corporation to have it, he wants to share it with everyone. And that's kind of the message. So, and he's done other films where, that's what he's done, has been like a very wealthy person who's come in and gotten into the fields and worked with the farmers, and is, just kind of giving that vibe of giving social messages about giving back to villages or whatever it is. Each film has a little bit of that. Sometimes it's really preachy, but again, we're not living in that era to know, that, for instance, farmer suicide or whatever, we can hear about it, but it doesn't have that visceral reaction from us that it does from the Indian audience.
Right.
So, all right, well, so I didn't pick the best one, but there was some things to enjoy.
But I want to see more.
Okay. All right, I left you wanting more. That's good.
Yeah, you can pick another for me, and we'll talk about it. I'm excited though, because as we were saying earlier, because things are just kind of difficult right now, and I had a lot of trouble watching movies just from I had no concentration for
Yes.
movies, but because we committed to doing this and it made me watch the movie. And so even though the movie was really flawed, I had a blast watching it. I mean, even the parts that were ridiculous, because it was such a relief to watch a film. So,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was something where there were certain points where, like you say, you could just. I'm not having to. This is not some art film where I have to think about philosophy or something like that. It's some fun motorcycle chases.
things got blowed up, and yeah,
real good. Blowed up real good.
It was a gorgeous guy to look at. So yeah, thumbs up. Yeah, very good.
All right, great. Well, Alisa, I would love to have you back. Share how people can find you on Twitter.
I'm on Twitter as @Bollywood Newbie.
I will put a link to, and she's wonderful to follow on Twitter. I really appreciated us having this conversation. I've been meaning to revisit this film for a long time, and the mixed feelings I had about it the first time, I still have, but it didn't. I was captivated enough with Mahesh Babu to then watch a bunch more of his films, which I hope you will watch more of his films too. I mean, he's got that something special about him. So he's not too hard on the eyes either. So anyway, please you can follow me on Twitter @PardeziYT, and please subscribe and hit the bell when you do, and you always get a notification of a new trailer reaction or film review or fun discussion like this.